Hello, welcome to the Sit Down, where we bring to you ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And today, I guess I'm the ordinary person bringing to you my story. I've had a lot of people ask me, so Kelly, what's your story? Well, let me first introduce myself all over again. My name is Kelly Reagan. I am the founder of Kelly Cares, Empowering Events. I'm also the founder and publisher and editorial director of My Story Magazine publications. I've done interviews and people are still asking, well, Kelly, what's your story? So I decided, I think it's time. I think it's time that I share my story. And I will be very authentic with you today. It's not an easy thing to do. I've taken some time, I've prayed about it, and I have to be honest, it's not a very easy, comfortable thing to do, to be in front of the camera or to just tell people your story. But one of the things I want to share is that God gave me this. He gave me the magazine, He gave me my purpose, and everything that we've gone through, everything everybody goes through in life doesn't just happen to just happen. There is purpose in everything. And so I wanted to take this time to really just talk to you for a minute. And I hope you have a minute. So join me, get you a glass of vino, glass of water, whatever works for you. Take a minute and take time to hear this, because it's not just your ordinary story. I don't take pride in that I'm anything or anyone special, but I know that God equipped me to be able to share some of the life lessons that I've gone through. I'm very excited to be able to also promote my new and upcoming book. We'll get to that in a second. But what I want to say is that, when God gave me the purpose of doing a magazine, which is titled My Story Magazine Publications, the idea was to be able to provide a platform for people to be able to share their stories of triumph, challenges. We could talk about love and relationships, which you all know I am absolutely the lovepreneur, and I'll explain that title later. Also to be able to just share stories of survival, talk about business and success in business, women in business, entrepreneurship, all those things that make us who we are today. So, when we got started with My Story Magazine publications, I had people contacting me wanting to share their story. That to me was the proof that God was in all of this. Because guess what? We all have a story. We all have a story. We all have some things that I know were not just for us. I say it often that we don't go through what we go through just for ourselves. We go through what we go through to be a blessing to other people, so that others can learn from our own very personal life experiences. And that's truly what I hope today, is that someone will be blessed by my story. So here it goes. Picture yourself as a 16-year-old. I think 16-year-olds usually are in school. I'm in high school. I came from a pretty decent family. I'm very grateful for my family. And, my father died when I was about 3 or 4. And so when mom remarried, her husband, he was actually from another country, which was really strange and different for me. I'm a 7-year-old, at this point. I'm 7 when they married. But he was an awesome dad, and I'm forever grateful for him. But at 16, I found myself staring in the mirror, looking at my hands. I don't know where I got this fairy tale idea from about marriage. But for whatever reason, it was one of those things I wanted to do. I wanted to be married at, not so much as at 16, but at 16, I knew that was part of my future. Had my little bubblegum machine ring, and I'm just prancing in front of the mirror. And at some point, I had in my head, this is the idea of what marriage is really about. We fast forward, I go through high school, I go to college, and I meet a young man at the age of 20. We get married at 21, started our family, and the rest is history. I was married for almost 18 years. Really, it was right at 18 years. I would say more so almost close to 20 years of being married. I started my adult life at a very young age. And, one of the things I always like to say is that one thing you won't get from me is any bashing. I don't bash. We have our life lessons. We go through what we go through, and we move on. Unfortunately, that marriage did not last further than the 18 plus years. But I have many, many life lessons that I'm grateful for. And that's the one thing that I've learned to do is find the gratitude in everything that I've gone through. I ended up with 2 beautiful daughters. I can't ask for anything more. That was absolutely the best part of my marriage, and I thank God for that. But when we talk about being married, it's a big decision. And when I was about 20 years old, I had a list. I know how many of you have created this list of what you think you want in a spouse. So I had this list, the good family, the good job, everything that we think we need to have the perfect marriage, right? And so I had that list. But when the marriage ended, I made a decision. That list needs to be revised. And so I spent a few years in my singleness, just being single, dating, living the life. I was still young, although 20 years later, not as young. But I experienced the life of being a single woman, and I didn't like it. It's not for everybody. This is the one thing that I have learned. Being single or being married is not for everybody. But you have to learn who you are before you can really live your best life. And so that was part of my learning process. I wanted to be married again. And so I did what most of us, I'm a Christian. So I have to put that out there first. I am a Christian. So I believe in prayer. I believe in listening to God. And sometimes we think we hear from God and we don't. And so, I made another decision. I met another gentleman, it was about maybe 3 or 4 years later. I decided, okay, we're going to try this thing again. And so we did. We said I do. Now, we talk about making decisions. See, I had a second list, but that list was so different from the first list. Why? Because I wanted somebody completely the opposite. And I wanted to run the show. I wanted this thing to be a Kelly show because I was doing everything the opposite of what I did the first time because I thought, well, the first time it didn't work. So we move on into life again with the second one, and when I look back on all of my choices, that's exactly what they were, choices. One thing I have learned is that God gives us choices. And we sometimes like to say, well, God gave me this or God told me that. But if we're not really in tune, sometimes we'll make some me choices. And that's what I did. So I was on marriage number 2. He was a great guy. I was crazy about him. But guess what? It still didn't work. Because I was too busy making my own choices based on what it was Kelly wanted. And so now I found myself divorced for a second time. You have to understand that this is humiliating. Coming from a woman who has always believed that, marriage is a one-time shot. And I don't think people get married to think that they're going to be married, 2 or 3 times. I certainly didn't. But so here I find myself divorced again. Didn't know what to do with that, but all I knew to do was to move forward and live my life. I was reminded of a story that my grandmother shared with me. And I asked her, Grandma, because see, my grandmother, this is going to surprise you. My grandmother eloped when she was 70. 70 years old. She had been through a lot in her life. And I think it's very important that we not judge people. Sometimes we don't know a person's story. So that's the reason why I'm also just in love with My Story magazine publications. Because everybody has a story and you don't know it unless they sit down and tell it to you. You can't judge people based on what you see on the surface. And so here I find myself, again, I'm divorced, and I talked to my grandmother and I asked her, Grandma, what's your story? What's your love story? And my grandmother said to me, what's love got to do with it? She said, what's love got to do with it? And I got tickled, because I thought, well, I thought everything, love had everything to do with it. She explained to me, well, I just wanted companionship. I wanted someone who I could depend on. I wanted someone who I knew would be there. And I thought to myself, well, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. And she said, and of course somebody help pay these bills. That's definitely not a bad thing. But so I took that because I honored and I valued everything that came out that woman's mouth. But I took that with me. And so going forward, I made a decision. I said, well, you know what? If I ever do this thing again, I want what Grandma had. I want someone who I can depend on, someone who's going to be there for me, someone to go to church with, dinner, movie. I did not factor in the need to be in love anymore. Because, I had done it twice before. And just to, I guess, bring you up to speed, I called myself the lovepreneur. That's the title I gave myself. I did it jokingly because I thought, I've done this love thing so many times, I guess I'm the lovepreneur. But then it stuck because out of everything that I've gone through, I felt like I had something to offer. I could talk about it. I could tell you some stuff. And, I know that I've had people to snicker. I know that I've had people to, talk about me behind my back or make their comments. It bothers me from time to time. But I always say, you don't know my story. And so moving forward, I had made a decision I was done with love, until another gentleman came along and I said yes. But this time I said yes because I had the same list that Grandma had. I thought, don't need all that. Don't need the love thing. But how many of you know you do need the love thing? The love thing is important. And so, moving forward in my life, I've just discovered that it's important, first of all, to hear from God. And before you make that choice, make sure it's the right choice. And, when I look back over my 3 marriages, yes, I've been married 3 times. It has been humiliating, for one. I've been a little embarrassed. But I've had people to encourage me. And that's important too, to always have a strong support system in your circle. I've had people tease me and say, I can't even get one husband and you done had 3. Okay, I get it. But see, I'm not proud of that. And the reason I'm before you today is because I had to take a moment and ask God, why? Why me? I just wanted love like everybody else. I just wanted to be married. See, I didn't go into details about each of my marriages. But in each of my marriages, there has been abuse. And, I'm not calling any names. I'm not pointing the order in which this happened. I said, well, at least I don't have to call anybody out out of having 3 husbands. But this old girl has been through some things. I have. And I know without a doubt that God didn't allow me to go through these things for nothing. I have experienced abuse. I've been drugged and sexually abused. I have experienced being used. I've experienced being misunderstood. But I just thank God for being a restorer. I thank Him for keeping me. I thank Him for delivering me. And I thank Him for using me. Because see, at the end of the road, I've thrown my hands up and said, forget it. Forget love. Forget all of everything. I've tried to be the best wife. I've tried to be the best person I could be. And I've still gotten stomped on. So I'm excited to introduce to you my new upcoming book called My 3 Husbands. Yes, it's called My 3 Husbands. And I know there are going to be a few snickers, but that's fine because God gave me this. And so the book actually, it promotes key points on what to know, things to do from lessons learned before you say, I do. I pray that it's a blessing to each of you, those who are preparing to get married, those who really are seeking to get married or even right at the cusp of getting married. It's never too late. But I want to be able to be a blessing because everything that I've gone through was not for naught. As we say, it was not for naught. I didn't go through all that for nothing. So again, thank you for your support. If you have any questions and if you want to contribute to upcoming talk segments with the Sit Down, you can reach me at Kelly@mystorypubs.com. Thanks again.